Hello everyone, welcome back to Coffee Crime with Doncha, episode number 8. I'm so happy that you are spending your time with me today. Before we jump into today's case, here is your friendly reminder. If you love tuning in for these deep dive true crime stories, please take a quick second to hit that follow or subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Leaving a 5-star rating or a short review helps our podcast community grow so much, and I appreciate every single one of you. I know that there are so many true crime podcasts over there, but I really try to bring you some not so popular cases, and not only from US but from all over the world and mostly from Europe. So today we are also traveling to Switzerland. I live in Switzerland, so it's my home country right now. And we are going specifically to a quiet, wealthy suburb called Binningen, just outside the city of Basel. On the surface, today's story looks like a fairy tale: a glamorous former beauty queen, a wealthy corporate consultant, a luxury home with sweeping views, and 2 beautiful little daughters. But behind those polished Instagram photos lay years of hidden domestic abuse, severe control, and psychological darkness that ultimately led to one of the most horrific crimes in modern Swiss history. Before we begin, here is your trigger warning, because today's episode discusses extreme physical violence, strangulation, severe post-mortem dismemberment, domestic abuse, and intimate partner homicide. If any of these topics are triggering for you, please take care of yourself and feel free to skip this episode. Your well-being always comes first. Also, English is not my first language, so be kind to me. Alright, you guys, let's get into this horrific case. So, let's start by talking about who Kristina Joksimović was as a person, because she was not so much more than the awful headlines that surrounded her death. Kristina was born on April 15th, 1985 in Binningen. Her parents were hardworking Serbian immigrants who settled in a city near Basel. Growing up in modest surroundings, Kristina was known for a young age for her warm heart, energy, and determination. As a young girl, she dreamed of becoming an astronaut, which was really funny when I read this. But as she grew up, her eye turned toward fashion and modeling. Standing tall and striking, Kristina entered the modeling world in her late teens. In 2003, she won the title of a Miss Northwest Switzerland, and 4 years later, in 2007, she became a finalist in the prestigious Miss Switzerland. But here's what made Kristina so special to everyone who met her. She wasn't competitive or arrogant. During this Miss Switzerland show weekend, while others contestants were focused on themselves, Kristina spent her late nights in hotel hallways teaching her fellow competitors how to walk gracefully in high heels. She was a true team player. Eventually, Kristina turned that passion into a successful career. She founded her own agency in Basel called Catwalk Coach. She mentored aspiring models and beauty queens contestants, coaching majors name like Dominic Rinderknecht, who went on to win Miss Switzerland 2013 and compete in Miss Universe. Later on, Kristina also worked in the IT recruitment. Friends described her as a vibrant, generous woman who stepped up whenever anyone needed help, always putting family and friends first. In March 2016, during a ski trip, 30-year-old Kristina met a man named Marc Rieben. Marc was 33 at the time, I think, and on the paper he seemed like the ultimate catch, right? He was the son of a prominent corporate lawyer from Bern. Marc grew up in a privileged, picture-perfect Swiss environment, sailing, hiking, and participating in Boy Scouts. He attended the prestigious University of St. Gallen and built a lucrative career as a business consultant. Friends from Marc past described him as a polite, well-dressed and composed, but also strangely distant, analytical and focused on control. Despite their different backgrounds, Kristina's warm, passionate Serbian-Swiss heritage and Marc reserved high society upbringing, they just fell head over heels in love. By August 2017, they got married in style. They celebrated twice. First with a grand wedding at the hotel Giesbach overlooking Lake Breens with 100 guests, and then a second time in Bosnia with Kristina's intended family. Soon after, they purchased a large modern home on a picturesque hillside in Binningen, complete with scenic views over Basel. Between 2020 and 2021, they welcomed two sweet daughters into the world. To the outside world, their life looked like a dream, right? Kristina's social media was full of pictures, family outings, smiles with her daughters, and just weeks before her death in 2024, photos from a snowy luxury hotel getaway above Lake Lucerne. But behind the scenes, the picture-perfect facade was completely crumbling. As early 2018, before their children were even born, cracks were showing in their relationship. Marc was deeply controlling, arrogant, and obsessive. Friends noted that Marc frequently criticized Kristina in public, correcting her tone, gestures, and words. He wanted absolute authority over everything, including strict rules for raising their children, banning screen time, and enforcing rigid schedules. Kristina, being an independent, self-made woman, didn't simply submit to his demands. And for a man with the heavy narcissistic traits like Marc, a partner who refused to be controlled felt like a constant threat. Soon they entered marriage counseling, but Marc often walked out of sessions or refused to show up. Behind those closed doors, the emotional abuse turned physical. In July 2023, police were called to their home in Binningen following a domestic violence report, though no formal charges were filed at the time. After one violent argument, Marc chillingly told Kristina, "You should be glad nothing worse happened." By December 2023, another violent incident left Kristina with visible strangulation marks on her neck. Marc tried to claim she had inflicted those marks on herself, but Kristina knew the truth. Court records later revealed Marc had a pattern of domestic abuse with previous partners too, once choking an ex-girlfriend and slamming her against the wall. In late 2023, Kristina took a stand. She consulted a divorce attorney, looked into their shared custody, finances, and made it clear she wanted out. For Marc Rieben, the thought of a public divorce, paying child support, and losing full control over his children was unbearable. To his narcissistic mind, his reputation and ego were everything, and he decided that if he couldn't control her, he would destroy her. Now, let's talk about Tuesday, February 13, 2024. This is the day where this horrific crime happened. That morning, Kristina was preparing to sit down with Mark to discuss the term of their upcoming divorce, custody, and financial support. Around lunchtime, an argument broke out inside their home. Mark refused to grant financial support and demanded sole custody over two young daughters aged 2 and 4. When Kristina stood her ground, Mark's rage exploded. According to forensic evidence presented in court, Mark attacked Kristina, punching her repeatedly in the face and body. He grabbed her by her throat, slammed her against the wall, and then wrapped a ribbon-like object around her neck, strangling her until she lost consciousness and died. Autopsy findings later showed extensive blunt force trauma across her body, bruises on her feet, leg, shoulder blades, and the back of her head, face cuts, and clumps of hair torn directly from her scalp. Guys, this is so horrific. What Mark did after killing his 38-year-old wife was not a panic-driven mistake. It was a cold, methodical execution of a plan he had quietly been preparing for months. Inside the basement of their home sat an isolated laundry room built with thick, soundproof walls with what investigators later described as an isolated bunker. Mark dragged Kristina's body down into the basement bunker. He didn't call emergency services. He didn't scream for help. Instead, he opened YouTube on his phone, played videos, and began systematically dismembering his wife's body. Using a jigsaw, a hunting knife, and garden shears, he cut her body apart. Court documents later revealed horrific details. He carefully removed her uterus, an act that forensic experts later described as a deliberate mutilation and ritualized degradation of the body. He uses an industrial-grade large vessel hand blender that he had purchased back in 2022, despite having no commercial restaurant use for it to bury her remains. He poured 10 liters of Jawel water, a chemical bleach, over the remains to dissolve DNA evidence. After completing this gruesome act, Mark took a shower, put on clean clothes, and went for a peaceful afternoon jog. During his jog, he dropped Kristina's cell phone onto a passing delivery truck to create a fake GPS trail. He then picked up two young daughters from daycare on his cargo bike, brought them home, and fed them dinner as if it were a completely ordinary Tuesday night. Meanwhile, Kristina's parents become deeply worried when Kristina failed to pick up her daughters or answers any calls. That evening, Kristina's father drove over to the house in Binningen. When he arrived, Mark met him at the door completely calm, smiling, and acting entirely normal, like nothing happened. Mark claimed he had no idea where Kristina was, casually suggesting she had had the habit of just taking off some time. Mark invited his father-in-law inside, cooked dinner, talked politely, and put two little girls to bed. While Mark was upstairs talking to Kristina's mother on the phone, Kristina's father felt a deep, sickening knot in his stomach. He began searching the large house room by room. He walked down into the basement bunker. In the corner of the laundry room, he spotted a large black trash bag. Sticking out of the top of the bag were strands of blonde hair. Kristina's father opened the bag and found his daughter's severed head inside. The poor father ran out of the house screaming into the street, stopped a passerby, and yelled for them to call the police immediately before running back inside to confront Mark. When police arrived at the scene, Marc Rieben showed zero emotion, zero tears, and zero distress. He was taken into custody on Wednesday, February 14, 2024. During police interrogation, Marc tried to play games. First, he claimed he found Kristina's dead body at the bottom of the stairs and dismembered her in a panic. When investigators pointed out that panic doesn't involve multi-step industrial equipment and YouTube videos, Marc changed his story completely. He then claimed he acted in self-defense. He asserted that during their argument, Kristina suddenly flew into a rage like a fury and attacked him with a knife, forcing him to strangle her and in an accident. But forensic pathologists and medical examiners completely shattered his self-defense claim in court. There were zero defense wounds or knife marks on Marc. Forensic evidence proved Kristina was strangled with a ribbon-like tool from behind, something nobody uses in a sudden knife defense. The presents were pre-purchased industrial blender, 10 liters of chemical bleach, and anatomy research on his computer prove premeditation. Forensic psychiatrist Professor Frank Urbaniok, an expert witness with 33 years of experience who evaluated over 5,000 cases, testified that he had never seen a domestic homicide carried out with such extreme cold-blooded cruelty and total lack of empathy. Fast forward to May 2026, which was just a couple months earlier. The trial officially opened at the criminal court in Muttenz, canton of Basel-Landschaft. Because of the extremely graphic nature of the evidence, the public was excluded from parts of the proceedings, and journalists reported from an overflow media room. Outside the courthouse, over 150 people gathered in quiet solidarity, holding banners against femicide and supporting Kristina's grieving family. Inside the court, a 43-year-old Marc Rieben appeared in a sharp suit and tie, carrying a leather briefcase, looking more like an executive attending a broad meeting than a man on a trial for butchering his wife. When given the chance to speak, Marc delivered a calculated statement claiming, "I loved my wife with all my heart. What I did is inexcusable and I take full responsibility." Such a pig! The prosecutor dismantled his fake remorse, pointing out, Marc's behavior after the crime was unbelievable in its cruelty and absurdity. He acted systematically with cold plan. His behavior showed the full measure of his hatred toward the victim. Kristina's family attorney read a heart-wrenching statement from Kristina's mother. "I stand here today as a mother who lost her daughter, whose children miss their mommy every day. No verdict can bring our daughter back, but it can show that her life mattered." On May 13, 2026, presiding Judge Daniel Schmidt delivered the court's verdict. Rejecting all claims of self-defense, Judge Schmidt found Marc Rieben guilty of murder and desecration of the body and sentenced him to life imprisonment. In his emotional closing statement, Judge Schmidt said, "There are cases that turn fiction into reality. This case has changed our reality. A greater disregard for human life is barely imaginable. The defendant acted out of a pure egoism and a narcissistic need for control. In addition to his life sentence, the court ordered Marc to pay 100,000 Swiss francs in damages to each of his two daughters, who were 5 and 6 old at the time of the trial, alongside 120,000 francs to Kristina's father, 100,000 francs to her mother, and 60,000 to her sister. When the verdict was announced, the crowd gathered outside the courthouse broke into emotional cheers and applause, weeping and hugging one another. Kristina's two young daughters are now being raised by loving family members, surrounded by memories of a mother who adored them above everything else. Oh God, you guys, this case is such a painful reminder that domestic abuse doesn't always look like bruised faces in the public. It often hides behind high society titles, luxury homes, and smiling social media posts. Kristina Joksimović was a bright, talented, loving woman whose life was stolen by a man who couldn't handle losing control. Guys, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse or feeling unsafe in a relationship, please reach out for help. I know it's not easy always, but you have to save your life. There are hotlines and support networks in every country ready to help you get out safely. I want to hear your thoughts on this case. Head over to the comment section and please let me know what you think of this horrific crime and how it was handled. If you appreciated this episode, please share it with friends, leave a 5-star review, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, if you have any suggestion for a new case, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Look out for one another, stay safe, keep your coffee warm, and I will see you next time for episode number 9. I love you guys. Take care. Bye.